The fluorescent lights of Harrison Tech's executive floor buzzed with their usual indifference as Marcus Webb straightened his tie, preparing for another board meeting. At 52, he'd built an empire from nothing, a self-made billionaire whose face graced magazine covers and whose decisions affected thousands of lives. But on this particular Tuesday morning, it wasn't a $1 million deal that would define his legacy. It was a small voice trembling with fear and a mother's silent tears behind a bathroom door. Marcus was reviewing quarterly reports when he heard it, a tiny whisper barely audible above the office chatter. "Sir. Excuse me, sir." He looked down to find a little girl, no more than 6 years old, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit to her chest. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her lower lip quivered as she tried to hold back tears. "Are you lost, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, crouching down to her level, his $700 shoes squeaking against the polished marble floor. The little girl shook her head frantically. "My mommy's crying in the bathroom. She won't stop, and I don't know what to do." Her voice cracked on the last word, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years of cutthroat business dealings and cold corporate negotiations. "Can you show me where?" he asked gently. She nodded and took his hand, her small fingers disappearing into his palm. They walked past bewildered executives and curious assistants, the powerful CEO being led by a frightened child through the corridors of his own building. She stopped at the women's restroom near the Human Resources Department, her hand still gripping his tightly. Marcus could hear it now, the muffled sound of someone crying, trying desperately to muffle their sobs. He knocked softly on the door. "Hello. This is Marcus Webb. Your daughter is out here, and she's worried about you. Whatever's happening, you're not alone." The crying stopped abruptly. There was a long pause, then the sound of water running. When the door finally opened, a young woman emerged, her eyes swollen and mascara streaked down her cheeks. She couldn't have been more than 30, wearing a simple blue blouse and slacks, the kind of outfit someone wears when they're trying their absolute best with limited means. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Webb," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. I work in data entry on the 3rd floor. I didn't mean to make a scene. Her voice broke again, and the little girl rushed to hug her mother's legs. "Let's find somewhere private to talk," Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He led them to a small conference room, closing the door behind them and pulling out chairs. "Please, sit. And someone needs to tell me what's going on." Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, looking everywhere but at him. Her daughter climbed into her lap, the stuffed rabbit squashed between them. "I got the letter this morning," Sarah began, her words tumbling out like water breaking through a dam. "My daughter, Emma, she needs surgery. Her heart has a defect, and if we don't fix it soon, the doctors say." She couldn't finish the sentence, just pulled Emma closer. Marcus listened, his jaw tightening. "And your insurance?" Sarah laughed, a bitter sound without humor. "The company insurance covers some, but not enough. Not even close. The surgery costs $300,000, and after insurance, I'd still owe $180,000. I'm a single mother. I make $32,000 a year. I've been here for 2 years, working overtime whenever I can, but I don't have that kind of money. No bank will loan it to me. I don't know what to do." The tears came again, silent and devastating. Emma looked up at Marcus with eyes too wise for her age. "Are you going to fire my mommy for crying at work?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. Is this what his company had become? A place where people feared losing their jobs for being human, for having emergencies, for breaking down when their child's life hung in the balance. "No, sweetheart," he said softly. "I'm not going to fire your mommy. In fact, I'm going to help." Sarah's head snapped up. "Mr. Webb, I'm not asking for charity. I just needed a moment to collect myself. I'll work harder, I'll take on extra shifts." Marcus held up his hand. "How long have you worked here?" 2 years, 3 months. "And in that time, have you ever been late? Ever missed a deadline?" Sarah shook her head. "No, sir. I pride myself on my work." Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. "Linda." "Yes, it's Marcus. I need you to pull the file for Sarah Mitchell in data entry. Send me her complete work history and performance reviews. Right now, please." He waited, scrolling through his phone. Excellent ratings across the board. Never a single complaint. "I see. Thank you." He looked at Sarah, really looked at her, seeing not just an employee number but a human being fighting with everything she had to save her child. How many others were there like her in his building? How many silent battles were being waged behind professional smiles and quarterly targets? "Here's what's going to happen," Marcus said, his voice firm but warm. "The company is going to cover Emma's surgery. All of it. Consider it done." Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mr. Webb, that's too much, I can't possibly." "You're not asking. I'm telling you. But there's more." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "You've been doing the work of someone who should be making twice your salary. I'm promoting you to senior data analyst, effective immediately. That comes with a 40% raise and better benefits. And I'm creating a new company program, an employee emergency fund for situations exactly like this. No one should have to choose between their job and their family, between their dignity and their child's health." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, but this time they were different, tears of relief, of disbelief, of overwhelming gratitude. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, his mind drifting to memories he rarely allowed himself to visit. "Because 30 years ago, I was 8 years old, and my mother was crying in a hospital waiting room. My father had just been diagnosed with cancer, and we had no money for treatment. A stranger, a businessman whose name I never learned, overheard my mother's desperate phone calls. He paid for everything. He saved my father's life, and he refused to tell us his name. He just said, 'Pass it forward when you can.' I built this company, I made this fortune, but I forgot that promise. Your daughter reminded me." Emma, who had been listening quietly, slid off her mother's lap and walked over to Marcus. Without a word, she hugged him, pressing her face against his suit jacket. Marcus stiffened for a moment, he wasn't used to such displays of affection, then slowly wrapped his arms around the tiny girl, feeling something hard and cold inside him begin to melt. The board meeting could wait. The quarterly reports could wait. For the first time in decades, Marcus Webb understood what truly mattered. Success wasn't measured in profit margins or stock prices. It was measured in moments like this, in the ability to change a life, to restore hope where there was only despair, to be human in a world that often forgot how. 3 months later, Emma's surgery was a complete success. She returned to visiting her mother at work. But now she ran through the halls with energy and life, her stuffed rabbit bouncing along beside her. The Harrison Tech Employee Emergency Fund had already helped 17 other families facing their own crises. And Marcus Webb, the CEO who once spent his days in cold calculation, now spent his lunch hours in the employee cafeteria, learning the names and stories of the people who made his empire possible. Sarah framed the letter he'd written her, not the promotion notice, but a handwritten note he'd given Emma before her surgery. "Be brave, little one. You have your whole life ahead of you. Make it count. Make it kind." Sometimes it takes a child's tears and a mother's desperate love to remind us that beneath the titles, the wealth, and the power, we're all just human beings trying to do right by the people we love. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a person can do isn't to close a deal or expand an empire, it's simply to listen, to care, and to help when help is needed most. Marcus never forgot the lesson that small voice taught him that Tuesday morning. Neither did the hundreds of employees whose lives were quietly transformed by a CEO who finally understood that profit and compassion weren't mutually exclusive, they were partners in building something that would outlast any quarterly report or stock ticker. The greatest returns, he learned, couldn't be measured in dollars. They were measured in smiles, in second chances, in little girls who got to grow up and chase their dreams because someone chose kindness when they could have chosen indifference. And it all started with 5 simple words: "Sir, my mommy's crying in the bathroom."